Welcome to Subconscious Conversations, where we take a look into the intricate world of the subconscious mind and how to heal the body, mind, heart, and spirit through its wisdom and guidance. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining me today. I'm Brielle, and I'm the sole practitioner at Springseed Wellness, where I practice the energy medicine techniques of emotion code, body code, and belief code, which were created by the wonderful Dr. Bradley Nelson. In today's episode, I will be talking about the healing process and how progress with this work might unfold. And this is mostly based off of my own personal experience, but I have also seen these trends in others and have heard other practitioners talk about the same trends that they've noticed as well. So a lot of people want to know how long it will take to heal a certain issue or to feel better. And I hate to say it's kind of difficult to determine because each individual and their unique issues that they're seeking to resolve are so different. And the time required to clear that up is incredibly unique to them and how their subconscious guides the process. Now, as I was discussing in last episode, we could muscle test to find out how many sessions it would take to clear up a certain issue. And your subconscious will tell us, but as we're making changes and those energy shifts are occurring, you might find that you're able to release more on your own and clear something up faster than expected. So if we start off with the answer that it will take 6 more sessions to clear something up, and then the next session we check again, we expect the answer to be 5, but now it's 3, because between those sessions you were able to actually let go of more things on your own. Now, conversely, there could also be a time when the subconscious mind says it will take 6 more sessions to clear something up, and the next session we check again and we expect the answer to be 5, but this time it's, say, 8. Sometimes as the energy shifts take place, we are increasing your capacity to release things, and then your subconscious mind might start making additional connections to other interfering energies that are maybe a little bit more loosely affecting whatever the issue is that we're working towards resolving. So it can be a little tricky to establish a completely clear timeline of exactly how long it will take to resolve something, which is kind of frustrating for some people, especially since we live in a society that's so heavily focused on the instant result and quick fix. But that's just not really how it works with healing. It takes time, and it's not always going to be easy, pleasant, or even all that noticeable. Sometimes the changes you feel are very drastic, and it's like this huge weight suddenly lifts off of you, or the skies are suddenly clear and everything seems so much brighter and so much more wonderful. And then the more you hold that feeling in your heart, the more you're able to let go of more baggage, and then the better it gets, and so on. But sometimes it's really subtle changes that you don't even really notice until you realize one day, oh wow, I haven't freaked out in the grocery store in the past few trips. Or you suddenly find yourself tackling that project you've been avoiding. Or you're suddenly not scared of something you were always scared of. But sometimes if people don't get that instantaneously, hugely noticeable change, they think, oh, this is bogus, and then they just give up, which really makes me sad because, yes, sometimes those wins don't present themselves right away, but that doesn't mean that improvements aren't happening. It's just less noticeable background programs that are changing. And you might even notice accidental gains. Like for me, I've never specifically focused on these things, but I've noticed that my motion sickness has drastically decreased in severity. So has my fear of spiders. So some changes are as subtle as minor software updates, and some are as drastic as changing the entire operating system. But they're both helping the machine function better and increase its capabilities. So it's still helpful. Now, some interesting trends I've noticed about the healing process is at first, a lot of people want to know so many details about everything. You know, you really want to understand exactly how, why, and when certain things affected you in certain ways. And it can be really fascinating and enlightening. But then over time, you realize, oh wow, this is going to take way too long to clean up this mess if I keep inspecting each piece of trash under a microscope. I'm just going to zoom my focus out, sweep it all into the dustpan, and throw it away. And there's this compulsion to want to make sense of everything and fit it into a neat and orderly story. But that's also rarely the case. As I mentioned in the last episode, the subconscious mind can create such an intertwined web of associations, and they can all be from very different events and very different times in your life. So it can be really hard to make sense of everything or to remember exactly what a certain emotion or thought process was stemming from. And really that's okay. It's totally okay when it makes complete sense and the story is clear, and it's okay if it doesn't make any sense at all and jumps all over the place. It's your personal story that really only makes complete sense to your subconscious mind. But even when your conscious mind doesn't understand the whole story, or even when you're only focusing on the highlights instead of every single detail, this work still really helps you establish a much deeper understanding of yourself. And when you understand yourself at that deep of a level, you can really make some significant improvements in your life, in your behavior, your actions, and reactions. But sometimes healing is hard work, and sometimes that intimidates people. But aren't you worth the effort? I think you are. But sometimes we have really dark things to face and we don't really want to. And that can cause a situation where the conscious mind wants to clear something up and heal, but the subconscious mind is so dedicated to its familiar, established patterns of behavior that it kind of resists letting go. And it creates this internal battle, which can be very frustrating. But there are ways to recognize when we see that resistance coming up, and there are ways to resolve that. One of the ways that we can recognize this resistance to healing is when somebody has extremely difficult processing symptoms. Now, this has happened to me a few times, and let me tell you, it can get pretty uncomfortable and kind of scary. But no fear though, because it's something that can be pretty quickly resolved if you reach out to your practitioner. And then from there, you can tackle the resistance piece of it and then move on. Now, another way we can notice if resistance is an issue is if we just can't quite seem to make a breakthrough with a specific problem, especially if it's a chronic problem. But however it is that we recognize that resistance to healing is at play, we can just adjust our approach and clear out anything that's blocking your subconscious mind from feeling safe enough to let go of the old familiar negative patterns and embrace new, more positive patterns. But sometimes we have really dark things to face and we don't really want to. So we kind of just ignore it until we can't. And if it's something the subconscious mind wants to release, but the conscious mind doesn't want to face, the subconscious mind will start trying to get the conscious mind's attention by sending out signals of physical pain or mental and emotional distress. And it's almost like the subconscious mind knows that there's a way to get rid of this junk, so it just keeps throwing it at us so we deal with it. And that can be really frustrating as well because you're doing all this work to heal yourself and then you just keep having more and more negative things come up and it can get a little overwhelming. But again, we just need to shift our approach a little and try and open up almost like a three-way conversation with the conscious mind, the subconscious mind, and the practitioner, and say, okay, we're all in this together. We're all working towards clearing this up. We don't need the overwhelming constant signals. We don't need to get rid of it all at once. Let's just take this at a more comfortable pace. And usually that really helps. And then from there, you can work on clearing up anything that's keeping the conscious mind afraid of facing things that you need to face. But I do want to pause here and clarify something. When I say that sometimes we have really dark things to face and we don't really want to, I don't mean that you have to talk about it. In fact, that's one of the things I love most about this work, is that you don't have to talk about anything unless you want to. But you will still be feeling through it and thinking through it as those energy shifts take place and those negative energies release. And sometimes thinking through it and feeling through it can be like an exhausting journey through a dark, thick forest, or a dark night of the soul, as a lot of people say. And sometimes it's hard to go on the journey of healing yourself when it actually takes work. But again, you are worth the effort, aren't you? I sure think so. And the really beautiful thing is, once you get through that and you come out on the other side, everything is so much better and you feel so liberated and empowered by facing that difficult stuff and putting it behind you where it belongs. I've also noticed this tendency where I find myself subconsciously searching for some negative pattern or feeling or thought. It's like my subconscious is so used to thinking or feeling or acting in a certain way that even after I clear that out, my subconscious is still searching for it, because it's just a deeply ingrained part of the program. And I have to focus on reminding myself to let it go completely and to quit searching for it just because it used to be part of the program. Because I've chosen to delete that part of the program, so I need to stop looking for it. And just that shift in my focus and just that acknowledgement really helps me allow myself to fully let those things go. But now letting go of grief is a much more difficult thing, because you still want to keep that person dear in your heart, and you will always miss them and you'll always feel sad about it. But I am here to tell you it is possible to still have all those memories, good and bad, and still hold that person dear in your heart, and sometimes even still hold them accountable for their actions in life. But you don't need to let it destroy you and your current life. Grief has a particular way of sticking around and just destroying a person, quite frankly. And it's harder to deal with the more complicated the grief is, like when it's mixed with a lot of other emotions like abandonment, guilt, anger, fear, resentment, what have you. But I have made a ton of progress with my grief, and while I still have a lot of work to do there, it feels really good to not have it constantly eating me up inside. Now, it'll always be there, but it doesn't have to run my life, and it doesn't have to ruin my life. But my grief is also a very complex set of emotional baggage that can be pretty difficult to face and to release at times. And when I just can't face to work on my grief, I work on other things, which ends up helping my grief as well, because the less pressure that's on the system, the better the system will work, and the better I will feel, and the more likely I will be to gain the strength to face the grief part again. So it can feel like a slow process at times, but the actual healing, the capacity for healing, and the momentum are still really working in your favor. So just don't lose sight of that. Now, abuse is another really difficult set of traumas to work through. When you're in a situation where some of the closest people to you that are supposed to love and protect you treat you like garbage, you start to think that you deserve it. You start to treat yourself like garbage. And you stop seeing the wonderful value that you hold inside because if the people closest to you don't see it or abuse you for it, you think you have nothing to offer. And that level of psychological trauma can be pretty daunting to work past. But again, I'm here to tell you from my own experience, you can get through it. And you have amazing qualities to offer this world, and you can get through those traumas and heal your life. Now, I'm still working through mine, but I can't even tell you how far I've come and how much more value I see within myself now, and how little patience I have for people who don't treat me in the positive ways that I now know that I deserve. So yeah, you can get through it. But there is also this kind of difficult cycle to healing that takes place where the body is basically oscillating back and forth between a stress phase and a recovery phase. And both phases have some symptoms that come along with them. And if you don't realize that pattern, it can be pretty frustrating. Now, in the stress phase, you might experience decreased digestion and therefore decreased appetite. And that's because all your blood's going towards, and all your energy is going towards your increased heart rate, increased blood pressure. And then you start to have compulsive thoughts, anxiety, restlessness, sleeplessness. And that's basically the body being in kind of that fight or flight preparation mode. So those are the symptoms that come along with that stress phase. And then in the recovery phase, you might experience kind of the opposite, where you have increased digestion and therefore increased appetite, and your heart rate and blood pressure decrease, and you start feeling more of fatigue and sleepiness. And if it's physical healing taking place, you can also experience some inflammation, heat, discomfort, and those sorts of things as well, because that's just how the body heals itself. So it's really important to recognize that you can have these symptoms during both phases, and that you'll be oscillating back and forth between those phases as you heal yourself. And it's totally normal, and it's a vital process of healing. And sometimes you'll notice it very obviously, and sometimes you won't really notice it at all. But it's a very important thing to be aware of, so that you know what's happening while it's happening. You know, my personal journey with progress has been a combination of all of the above things that I just listed, and is still ongoing. But one of my favorite recent breakthroughs or realizations was a couple months ago. I was having a particularly stressful month, and I was feeling this really uncomfortable feeling, and it was very unpleasant. So I was like, okay, what is this feeling? Why am I experiencing this? And I suddenly realized, oh, holy crap, that's anxiety. And it just blew my mind. I was so happy. I wasn't happy that I was feeling anxiety, but I was just so elated at the fact that it took me a few moments to recognize it. Because for most of my life, anxiety was my constant companion. So much so that I was finding it really difficult to function in life. And yes, I would regularly freak out in the grocery store. And I love it when that no longer happens. But it was so weird and so amazing to have that sudden realization that what was once my most constant companion in life, I now barely recognized. And I keep finding myself in situations where I realize, oh wow, I would never have been able to do this a year ago, or 6 months ago, or last week. And I love when those sudden aha moments hit me and I realize how far I've come and all the things that I faced to get there. I feel so much more brave and bold and empowered within myself. And it's just really amazing. And that in and of itself increases the healing capacity and the speed of healing. And although it can sometimes be difficult to go on the healing journey and to stay on that path, it really is worth it. And in my opinion, these modalities have been the most efficient path for my healing journey. And I want to help other people find that same level and efficiency in their healing, because I think everybody deserves that. So on that note, thank you so much for joining me today, and please join me for next episode where I will be diving a little bit deeper into my anxiety and my personal journey of healing, at least part of that. So thank you so much. See you then. If you would like to set up a session with me to experience this work for yourself, please go to springseedwellness.com. If you would like to find a practitioner in your local area, please go to discoverhealing.com. And please always feel free to reach out with any questions or specific topics you would like me to address. See you next episode.